Welcome to Heart Riffing, a podcast by way of the heart. Here we explore what it means to reconnect with your essence and live from a place of personal freedom. If you're interested in learning more about our courses, mentoring and workshops, feel free to visit wayoftheheart.com.au. We're so glad you're here and we hope you enjoy the episode. Hi and welcome back to Heart Riffing, a podcast by way of the heart. Bello, how are you going?
Good. How are you, Jess?
I'm good.
All right. Good.
Today, we wanted to do an episode on the gap between words and actions.
Yep.
And this came from a lovely viewer who asked us, what happens when somebody is saying one thing but they're doing another? So their actions aren't matching up with their words. How do I deal with people like that? Or how do I deal with that type of situation and scenario? And I think it is quite a common one. And I know that we all do it, but I think it would be interesting to focus on what's going on when that happens.
Yeah. Great.
Initial thoughts?
Yeah, I got quite a few thoughts on this one. I mean, it's obviously not just an issue for out there for other people. I think in my own life, narrowing the gap between what I say and who I am is I would say for me the essence of what it means to be spiritual. So that my inner life and the words that flow out of my inner life is how I'm turning up, as opposed to saying stuff where there's a really big gap between what I'm saying and who I am. And that used to be summed up in the very early part of my spiritual journey. People would say, you don't possess what you profess. Was a neat way to say it.
Yeah.
It's like, I hear this, but I look at you and I don't
see that.
There's a really big gap. And so for, this idea of words with gaps, it's like I'm hearing the words, but the gap between what you're saying and who you are is really large. And so for me, it's been a kind of a focus in my own life of saying, okay, how do I reduce the gap? Here's what I'm saying. How far away from that am I?
Yeah.
And I think that comes down to fundamental personal integrity. And I think it's definitely a way that you can make an assessment of not someone's credibility as if we're testing someone and we're putting someone through this test, but if there's a really big gap between who someone is and what they say, then it gives you pause.
Yeah.
It's a reason to stop and go, you know what, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about what you say because I'm looking at this. This is so possessing what you confess. That they're quite married together for me. I really like that idea.
So I guess what is happening when somebody is saying one thing and doing another? Because I think that this it's a complex topic because it delves into the realm of human mess, really.
Yeah.
And when life sort of gets messy, I think that people can have an idea of who they are or who they want to be and what they value, but if they're not operating from a grounded space, then their energy's all being mixed up and they might be actually doing something else. So there's a cognitive dissonance between who you think you are and who you're actually being.
Well, yeah, I think there's often a case where we say stuff that, that I often think that we speak beyond ourselves in that regard. And, if I was to say, why does that happen? It's too easy to say it's because, the person's, a liar or, a cheat or a reprobate, I don't know, a dickhead, you know what I mean? To sort of pick a word that belongs in this century. I think when words come out of emotions and out of our head and out of our ego, they're always not representing us. I think words spoken in the heat of the moment are untrustworthy. Almost always, there's too much heat in them.
Yeah.
There's too many neurochemicals in them.
Yeah.
Because if we think that, say, our amygdala, that middle part of our brain, that is our fight, fright, flight response, we get stimulus, it hits the amygdala, and it hits, various receptors in our brain and adrenal glands, and we get a release of neurochemicals, and we're off. It's like we've just got a big shot of something. We're fully G'd up with neurochemicals.
Yeah.
And the words that come from that are like the words that come from anyone who's on a chemical hit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if someone took a bunch of speed and then started telling you a story, you go, dude,
you're on speed, bro.
You could be a little bit cool. Like I'm going to really just pause.
Yeah.
Put a pause on this conversation because you're a little bit, you're just taking some crack, dude. And, like this isn't really landing.
Yeah. And so this is the same for like every elevated state, right? Like you could be in an argument or you could be in a really difficult time of life and you're a bit discombobulated, like all of these things.
Completely. And so words spoken in the heat of high emotion or in the coming out of a purely emotional state. You see it on the football field all the time. 1 minute, two guys are wanting to smash each other's face and they're saying, I'm going to kill you, like they're ready to, and then at the end of the game, they're giving each other a hug and walking off together. And you go, okay, the chemicals clearly, the adrenaline drop, whatever that was, the cortisol or whatever it is. So I think that's worth keeping in mind. I always used to say to couples who, when I did, marriage guidance stuff and interventions with marriage, if someone's yelling, just walk away. If someone's raising their voice and the pitch and the tone of this is getting elevated, nothing you say in that space can be trusted. And that's essentially an abusive and a manipulative. The person raising their voice is actually trying to dominate and control. So that's a highly emotive place. It's a neurochemically infused place. Those words I don't trust. Then you can drop down, and we're talking about heightened energy.
Yeah.
You can also talk about when someone is utterly depressed.
Yeah. Shut down.
Completely shut down, closed off. They're deep in the darkest despair. Is like, I'm probably not going to trust those words as well.
Yeah.
I'm going to listen to them because I don't want the person to self-harm or do something bad, but I'm also going to go, no, there's a sunnier side here and you're not necessarily representing it. Or you're not touching it at the moment.
This isn't a full representation of
the situation. You're so shut down. You're not really looking at this with any degree of objectivity, right? And then I think you can drop into the headspace, and I just think it's worthwhile to realize that the head, the prefrontal cortex makes up stories. It selectively gathers data. It doesn't. There's so much data out there. It's like, as big as our brain is, we train our brain through neural pathways to have a certain level of awareness, a certain level of perception. So it gathers data around that awareness and perception, and it interprets it according to a particular worldview, and it spits out a story. And then because we're humans, we don't just go, oh, that story is it's just one story. Like we could have made up another one. No, we don't do that. What we do is we say, no, that's the truth.
Yeah.
So we lock it in as truth. And notice that people will argue for their truth.
Yeah.
All right. People will insist that the way they're seeing it is the way that it is, and part of the skill of a good psychologist is to introduce a little bit of data that says,
maybe.
Everyone hates me. Everyone's always hated me. And the good psychologist goes, oh, so did your mother hate you?
Yeah.
Which could be a loaded question because the person will go, yeah, my mother hated me more than anyone. You go, okay, you fail on your...
Try somebody else, something else. Pivot.
Pivot. Did you have a puppy dog?
Do you have a dog? Yeah.
Did you have a puppy dog that wagged its tail at you? Yeah, no, it bit me as well. It's like, okay, all right, you're right. Everyone does hate you. I hate you. It's like,
I can't help you.
Clearly, I'm not a psychologist, right? But, the skill of sort of like, narrative therapy is to probably introduce an element in there that just contradicts the data, gives them another data point that isn't the data point that is it. This goes back to we delete, we distort, we generalize. in the creation of our stories. So, but just to know that your head makes up stories,
Yeah.
and just to know that the stories are a map of the way you've interpreted the world, they're not actually the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that that's really interesting. Um, and so I think sometimes you have to be careful of the stories that people tell
Mm-hmm.
because they're often embedded and they're often historical. Um, and so I think stories are not to be trusted.
Mm-hmm.
They're there, they serve a purpose, they probably hold elements of truth, but to say that they are the truth is too big a jump, you know,
Right.
for me.
Yeah.
And too often they're in the service of an attachment,
Mm-hmm.
or they're in the service of a fear or an
Mm-hmm.
aversion.
Yep.
You know, I don't want to do this,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm scared of doing this, so I make up a narrative about why that's really hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, really, is it that hard to do? Why don't you have a go?
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like,
Yeah, so I think like all of this touches on an awareness that we can have when going into an interaction with somebody who, you know, the gap between their words and their actions is really big.
yeah.
But what like I think that and that awareness is good, right?
Well, I think it's also just a matter of I think for me, it's just a matter of realizing that words could be coming from an emotive space. They can be coming from a narrative head space. They can be coming from a fundamental needs space where someone's just trying to meet a need. And so they're just shooting off a bunch of stuff because they're just, you know, they've got this need that needs to be addressed, you know, a need to be valued, a need to be, you know, like a friend of mine said it really, really beautifully once when we were talking about someone who never shut up. We'd go to this social event and this person would just like talk and talk and talk. And my mate said, and I would go like this, you know, this person never shuts up. Like, and my mate just said, yeah, because they're insecure. And so it's like all their speech and all the stuff that they were saying and the way they were projecting themselves in the room was really about meeting that need.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, I just want to be noticed. I need to be affirmed. I'm uncomfortable here and I'm using words to try and regulate and to feel a connection, right?
Yeah.
So all of that becomes really important because then I think there's a fundamental difference when you speak from your heart. You know, when you speak, because the thing that we say about heart is that heart is a primary voice. Heart speaks from essence.
Mm.
So I think all the others are quite, when you train yourself a little bit, all the others are go, oh, that's coming out of their emotions, or that's coming out of their head, or that's just their ego. Oh, no, this is coming from their heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can actually tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when someone speaks from their heart and they speak genuinely from their heart, I think at that point you go, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's really worth tuning into, right?
Yeah.
Which is not to say that the other stuff is not worth tuning into because it is communicating something about where they're at and what's happening for them. But the speech that I think has the least amount of gap is heart speech.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I always use the example, you know, you could say to anyone, you know, what do you feel, think, you know, react, get triggered, you know, about this particular person, and they could give you their emotions and their mind and their ego and all this sort of stuff. And then you could say, but do you love them? And you could say that to almost any parent. That kid drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
Well,
and a parent can say, this kid frustrates me. And you go, yeah, but well, do you love that kid? It's like, do I love it? I'd lay my life down for that kid. You know? So I think that that's just interesting. That just should orientate us in the space that people's words come from different sources. And sometimes the source that it comes from actually extends the gap between who they really are and what they're actually saying. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think that that's important to understand. When someone is grounded and centered and speaking from a heart-centered place, I think, you know, that's probably the moment where there's less gap. Mm-hmm. You know, more sincerity, less gap. And that's beautiful when people communicate from that level. That's a really beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. You know.
I mean, I like that framework that you're talking about. That those 5 different energies. That's something that we talk about in our course. Yeah.
Well, it's a fundamental idea, you know, that we're a diverse energetic creature we have multiple things operating at different times, multiple energetic centers operating. But, in way of the heart, we're really trying to allow heart energy to be the thing that grounds us. And that's especially true with words,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, of course, we run into lots of times we run into people who aren't speaking from their heart.
And then, so how do you deal with that? Because I don't think that you can you can't turn around to the boss or the spouse or whoever it is, the friend who is speaking out of a really egoic energy and just go, "Oh man, you're so in your ego right now. Just chill out." Like you can't do that. So
No.
how do you interact with people like that? Especially if you have to interact with people like that.
Well, I mean, I guess I reserve the right not to necessarily, I give myself the right not to necessarily buy into that. I don't really need to take that seriously. This was a thing that the Daoists were really, really good at, like Zhuangzi and Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu starts off the Tao Te Ching, which is his one and only book, and he basically says the Tao that can be spoken is not the true Tao. A little bit later on, he says the person who knows doesn't speak. The one who knows doesn't speak, and the one who speaks doesn't know. And it's a bit mischievous, but basically what Lao Tzu's pointing to is he's pointing to this idea that words kind of aren't the thing. That there's always the thing, and then the words are always a descriptor afterwards. So someone says something to me and I take their words literally, and I don't have any kind of discernment about what's the thing behind that. Then I'm falling into the trap of a person who speaks and doesn't know. Like I'm falling into the foolishness of the person who has no wisdom, because the wise person goes, I hear the words, but there's something else behind that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really clever way to view life. I probably think that ties back into, and this is not to be philosophical, right? But people speak out of their worldview. So there's been a recent movement in geopolitics of people speaking from a tribal nationalistic worldview, America first. And everyone goes, well, if it's America first, then we're going to do Canada first, and we're going to do the EU first. And it's, the problem with that kind of tribal nationalistic language, right, is that it's coming from a particular worldview. Like you just look at that and you just go, oh, anyone who speaks America first sort of stuff, anyone who speaks that doesn't realize that America is actually part of this thing called the Earth. And that's a singularity. And that when you go out into space and you look back, you don't go, look at America. You go, look at the Earth.
Yeah.
And in the Earth, there's diverse tribes of people. And yes, there's 260 million that live on that particular continent, but there's billions on the whole surface of this thing, right? But what you find is that people, they live in their bubble. They live in the world. They live in the bubble of their worldview. And if their worldview is tribal, be it nationalism, be it religion, be it some sort of cultural, container, and if they live within the context of their container, then they only speak out of the container.
Yeah.
Think of it like a box, right? It's not that you don't have the potential to see other worldviews, but the reality is if you're stuck in that cultural framework, then you don't see it. You don't, and so therefore you don't speak out of what you don't see because your frame of reference is too small, right? We always marvel sometimes when we meet really fundamentalist religious people of any persuasion, or anyone, right? Anyone who has a form of fundamentalism. Fundamentalism doesn't have to be religious, right? Fundamentalism can be anything. This person has locked it in this belief which is fundamental to who they are. They believe it rigidly, and you go, wow. And they speak out of that, and it's jarring because you go, dude, this is not interacting with anything else out here. This is just a dialogue in the box. You can get people who've experienced trauma and their trauma drives them into a box and they speak out of their trauma. You can get people who have been, discriminated against. And so, I mean, I think I could have done that, like I think some of the pain I had in the deconstruct with my journey and some of the ways, I almost, when I speak about institutions and institutional and organizational life, it's invariably deconstructive.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I'm invariably drawing attention to the failures of the organization and the failures of institutional bureaucracies. It's a little bit like this. Someone had a saying where they said, throw a stone into the pack of dogs, and the one that yelps the loudest is the one you hit. In other words, is the person who yelps the loudest or protests the loudest or rails the loudest is normally speaking from a woundedness or a box.
Okay.
And so you can sit with someone and go, that's not really you speaking.
Yeah.
That's your wound speaking. That's your trauma speaking. That's your socialization speaking.
Yes. But then, like, what do you do with that? Do you know what I mean? Like, say that your spouse is, speaking, I don't know, they're going through something. They're in a space of wounding or trauma, and they're coming out of the trauma box or the wounded box or whatever it is. And like, this is not you.
Mm-hmm.
But that, even though you have that awareness that this is not them, that doesn't stop them from speaking out of the box. Like, that awareness doesn't suddenly shake somebody out of it, and it doesn't make the situation any easier for you to deal with either.
Well, that's the point. So, because you're kind of saying like this is like, okay, all this awareness is good to know, Bello, but so what? It's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
But why the so what question? What does that come from? Does that come from some desire that you fundamentally feel like we need to get past all this and get to the real stuff? Is that the perception?
No, I think it's like
what's the conclusion you're trying to land on?
It's a good question. I think it's more like dealing with people is hard. Loving people is hard, and it's even harder when they're not in a position where they're connected and loving themselves. And so, and I think, like, when you're having to do relationship with somebody who is unmoored and disconnected and not coming out of a heart space and is stuck in another energy or another frame, that's difficult. So I think what I'm asking is there a practical way outside of awareness? Like, awareness is good, but is there a practical way to just, like,
but let me push back. Well, let me push back, right? What are the rules of engagement in the dialogue? What are the rules of engagement in the relationship?
Yeah.
If the rules of the engagement in the relationship is for you to be my friend, you can never speak back to me. You can never challenge me.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be unequivocally in my corner,
mm-hmm.
and you can never go, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Then that's an unsustainable relationship.
Mm.
Like, in my relationship with Ange over 38 years, it's like I may not in the moment be able to push back,
mm-hmm.
right? But I sure as hell push back.
Yeah.
Because I can't walk around in a relationship with a woman that I live with for the last 38 years and pretend like something that she said, if she said something that hurt me or something that I thought was wrong, or if she behaved in a way that I felt was incongruent and she defended that, I go, okay, in the moment, I can't have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But I will definitely circle back when there's no heat, when there's no emotion, when the story's dissipated. I will go back and I go, hey, you know where we were the other day? And of course she will. And I'll go, there's a bunch of stuff going on for me in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I get where you were coming from, but this is what was going on for me.
Mm.
Can you can you clarify that? Or but if you have a relationship where all you can say is you have to be unequivocally positive with me all the time, you can never say anything that challenges me, then then watching them, kind of bullshit their way through a massive gap between what they're saying and how they're behaving. And, you're pretending you're being this, and then you're representing that, and you're covering up all this with a bunch of bullshit over here. And you want me, and you need me to believe your bullshit, and I don't.
Yeah.
But I can't say I don't believe your bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, that's not an honest friendship. It's just not.
Mm-hmm.
And that friendship will come under strain because this person will eventually feel so much pressure to say, the essence of my friendship is I've got to believe their stuff.
Yeah.
But the essence of genuine friendship is to go like, dude, this is the essence of true crew. And there's a whole chapter in our book on crew. I say the essence of crew, and this is person who is crew in my life, and there's probably under 10 people who are, is that they know me even when I lose sight of myself.
Yeah, right.
So they're not my crew because they're just, they're not fans in, they're not fans in a fan club.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
they're not holding up signs at my concert going, you're amazing, I love you. That's not, no, there are people around my table that when they see me behaving in a way that isn't congruent with who I am, they go, are you okay?
Yeah.
Is there something going on here, mate?
Yeah.
And I go, well, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And I might respond in a triggered way.
Yeah.
And they'll go, you seem a little bit triggered.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll push back. They'll lovingly push back.
Yeah. And I think like that pushback too can often take people from that external space into crew. Do you know what I mean? Like having those pushback, those crucial conversations with people either deepens the relationship or shows you that the terms of engagement are unsustainable for the level of depth that you'd be after, right?
Yeah, well, a relationship that can't sustain any level of kind of diversity is not a very robust relationship.
Yeah.
This was always our case with pluralism. In modern day pluralism is like, I accept everyone who's inclusive except for all you uninclusive bastards.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, I always pick on the vegan because it's the easiest one. We love everyone except meat eaters. Oh, it's not pluralism then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a pluralistic ecosystem then.
Yeah.
It's not, it's still just everyone's welcome as long as you're like us. That's like going to Bellingen or Byron Bay. Everyone's so alternately the same. How wonderful. Bellingen markets. They're so diverse. You're all
wearing hemp.
You're all wearing hemp hoodies with bare feet and canvas pants. You're all selling ayahuasca and gummies. And bee honey.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. Does anyone here have a hamburger? No.
Get out, hamburger. Get out.
Cast him out to Urunga. That's not inclusivity. The same as it's not a robust friendship if there can't be pushback.
Yeah.
If I can't say, hey, I find what you're saying really doesn't line up. It's like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my wife says that to me often.
Yeah.
My kids say that to me, like Lydia, not so much you, my middle daughter will say to me, well, that's not, we'll be driving in the car and someone will pull in front and I'll have an appropriate reaction, which will be very Australian. And Lydia will go, that's not very guru. I mean, shut up. I'm not trying to be a guru, But she'll point out the fact that this kind of calm way of the heart thing, she'll be the first one to go, chill out.
Yeah.
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 And I like that. I like the fact because she has the liberty to not treat me like, our relationship isn't up here where the communication always has to be like this.
Yeah.
The relationship's here.
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that the person's ready to have that conversation in the moment.
Yeah,
it's okay.
right.
There can be some discernment about when you do that.
Yeah. I think that
is that helpful?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that landed it where I wanted to land it. Or I think that got to the core of what, the curiosity point was in the conversation. I wonder if we can like summarize it, because I think that we covered a lot of ground and we touched on a lot of different concepts.
Well, I think we can summarize this whole conversation pretty easily. I think there's an awareness that people speak from lots of different sources, right? From emotions, from their head, from their ego, and from their heart, right? People also speak from the box within which they're being held in that particular moment, right? And that box can be narrow, it can be sharp, it can be limited. It can limit awareness. So I see what's in the box, I don't see beyond my box, you know? And all of that creates an awareness for us that communication is coming to us, and it's not always heartfelt communication, right? And so often people are saying stuff out here, but but they're back here somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Which gives you the discernment, you know, not to get triggered with everything that everyone says all the time, and to maybe bring some level of insight or some level of sympathy and or awareness about where they're speaking out of, right? But then when people are speaking stuff, which you just go, you know, I'm not, you know, you become a little bit of a Daoist sage and you go, I'm not believing this, you know, like this is not lining up, right? I don't want to go along with this, you know, and it could feel toxic. It could feel wrong. It could be incongruent. It could be something that you fundamentally don't believe. It could be a violation of your own values. It could be anything. Can you just go, you know what? I'm not doing that. Like when someone speaks racist language and you just go, no, dude, no, we're not. Not around me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a conversation with them about the box that they're in, the racist box that they're in. It's like, no, don't bring that stuff in my space, right? I don't speak like that. That's not good. So you know, you want to put that boundary in place, then I think, you know, the hardest to do that is with really close friends and loved ones and people who, you know, you have serious engagement with and you serious emotional ties with and serious connection with. And it's even harder if that connection comes with a set of rules that says you always have to be positive.
Yeah.
You always have to be like this. You know, the spouse that can never criticize, you know, the wife that can never criticize the husband, you know, that always has to go along with the controlling bloke.
Yeah, right.
You know, that it's like, no, that's not a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
You know, that's not good communication. That's, you know, that borderline abusive. And so you then have to pressure test that relationship and say, hey, listen, I love you, but I'm not always going to. So the people that I love the most would know that I love you, you know, deeply, passionately, with all my heart. That does not mean I agree with you.
Yeah, totally.
All right. My love is not something that is so passive that I can't ever push back on you. And I don't want anyone to love me in a way where they can't go, dude, that's not very guru of you, Dad. You know, 8 years on your mountain and you're still a dickhead behind the wheel, you know. Like, okay, thank you, Lydia. You know, like, yeah, no, I don't want that.
Yeah.
You know? Sam did it to me the other night. We went out to dinner and the meal was like an hour late and I just was like so frustrated. And Sam's going, hey, chill, big man. Chill, big man. You know, it's not his fault.
Yeah, because you were speaking from the hangry energy.
And I was speaking from the like, he should have offered us some dim sims or something. We've had to wait an hour. You know,
I'm hungry.
It's like, dude, calm. And I was like, shut up. Why are you so realized? You put no effort into your realization. You haven't sat in a mountain for 8 years by yourself. So, you know, but that kind of pushback is really, really positive. I like it, you know. That's what makes communication helpful. The other thing, I think this makes it interesting, right? The other thing, and this again comes from the Daoist, this one comes from Zhuangzi more than anyone else, but he would say, have you heard and this will sound philosophic, right? It's actually not. Have you heard the noise of the holes, the sound? Have you heard the sound of the holes? And what he's talking about is he's talking about the wind moving through the trees and wrapping around hollows in the trees and wind across the mouths of caves and around rocks and crags. And what he's pointing to in this moment, right, is he's pointing to the idea that the whole world is a form of communication.
Mm.
And he'll go on later on and he'll say, what about the tweeting of the birds?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we hear that there's birds tweeting all around here at the moment.
Mm.
This is the good thing about living in the treehouse. I don't ever listen to the tweeting of the birds and going, wow, that bird is got a fantastic take on the geopolitical situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know what they're talking about.
Yes.
It's just mindless tweeting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When I hear my cat meow, it's either I'm hungry, pat me, or leave me alone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or let me out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some version of I'm not happy and you're
Yeah.
annoying me.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You know what I mean? A dog wagging its tail is a form of communication.
So like make the link for me. Like how do like I mean how does this link to the gap between
Well, we humans carry a massive gap.
Mhm.
This is what I loved about David Attenborough, and I said this to you before. David Attenborough takes us into the middle of the Amazon jungle, and we go, I'm not sure why we're here, but the cameras, it's very wild here. And then we screen down, and there's this like tiny little toad the size of a fingernail, and he goes, this is the deep Amazonian, frog or whatever it is. He doesn't call it a frog, he gives it a proper name. And he says, and when it wants to find a mate, and then you see the frog, the whole bottom of the frog's jaw just turn bright red. He goes, he's crying out for a mate now. And you go, damn, really? It's like we've been taken into, out of the stratosphere, down through this, like into the cross into the Amazon, down through the tree canopy, down under the canopy, under the brush, right to the water's edge. And there's this like tiny little thing, and this tiny little thing's going, I really want to date.
Yeah.
Is there someone out there that
love me?
This is my Tinder, like scroll, me. It's communication, right?
Yeah.
It's speech. And humans don't get that.
Right.
We don't see that. The whole world is a form of communication.
Yeah.
The whole world is a language. This is the thing that makes us so fascinated by a guy like Attenborough, because he spent time observing things communicating, things speaking. They're not speaking the language of humans. They're not speaking English. They're not speaking Mandarin, or they're not speaking, French or Italian. They're speaking frog.
Mm.
They're speaking micro frog love language.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And he sees it and goes, look at that communication. We, most of the time, because of our limited perception and awareness, we're really just listening to our own words. The average person is really just listening to their own words.
Mm.
They're not really picking up the language of other people, let alone the language of the environment that they're in, let alone a deep connection and grounded connection to the thousands of other species, the thousands of other life forms. What's my point in all of that? Let's bring it back to the very first point. Narrowing the gap between what is said and connecting to what is said with our heart, I think that is a real, I think that's a real quest in life. It's a real challenge for us. Learning to embody communication, learning to see the heart and the essence, and learning to connect to the person behind the communication, learning to dismiss what is irrelevant and nonsense and constructed and reactive, but learning to connect to the person behind that is the real game here for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if I think that's the point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think so too.
All right.
I'm glad that you landed that for me.
Yeah.
Because I was like, wait, where's the link? How does it link back? But like, I get it. I get it.
Yeah, I think the link back is a really beautiful one. Everything is communicating. Mm-hmm. The question is, to what degree am I listening? Mm-hmm. And then to what degree am I bringing discernment and insight and wisdom? Mm-hmm. And maybe that was the Daoist point when they said, he who knows doesn't speak, and he who speaks doesn't knows. Is that so much of the best communication is not going to be
In the
the
words,
rumble tumble nonsense of just most communication. But it's going to be deeper than that.
Yeah.
And maybe it's going to be, maybe some of the most profound communication is what we hold in silence. You know. Anyway, it's a big topic, but I think we've had a good crack at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Thank you very much.
See you next week.
Thank you for listening to Heart Riffing. If today's conversation resonated, you can find more of our work, including courses, mentoring, and workshops, at www.wayoftheheart.com.au or on our Instagram, Way of the Heart Official. We'd love to hear your thoughts, reflections, or questions, so please always feel free to message or comment. We look forward to seeing you next time.